The movie Fight Club is filled with different messages, morals, and meanings. But the thing most people take away from this movie, even after their first viewing, is most encapsulated by this clip.
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars. But we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. And we're very, very pissed off.
Throughout this movie, one of the most prevalent themes is this idea of an over-consumerist culture. And this goes back to something which is deeply and fundamentally true about our society and the state of the world that we live in. And it's that us young people, and all of us really, have been brought up in a culture which has made this idea so pervasive to us and so salient, so real to us, that we can be happy by having things. And this is a fundamental error that we're making, right? We think we can change who we are by having things, right? It's called modal confusion. I made a video about this a little while ago, but I want to briefly go over the idea. It's that there are two different modes we have, right? There's a being mode. I am something. I am happy. I am good. I am bad. I am sick. And there's having. I have a car. I have a house. I have children, right? But I have children and I am a father. Those are two different things, right? And so our society has tried to teach us and has continued to reinforce this idea that we can change how we are, what we are, this being mode, by having new things. Now, to some extent, these two things are linked, right? I can't be a father without having children. But having money doesn't make me happy. And we've associated these two ideas far too much. This goes back to the Stoic idea that we need to release ourselves from the worldly pleasures and give in to what's more natural, trying to be better, trying to be more in touch with the real, with the truth of our reality, right? And what does that mean? That means being in touch with something that's more good, something that's better than whatever this existence is. Because I think we are all realizing, and this movie demonstrates this idea, that in fact we are not happy just because we have things. In the beginning of the movie, the main character, he has so many things and they become his identity, right? And again, this is the fundamental error, that if I have things, I become someone. It's not how it works. To some extent, it can be true, but not to the extent that we think. And in reality, the only thing we have control over is ourselves, who we are being. We, in fact, don't have control over what we have, right? You have children today, but tomorrow they could die, right? That's why the Stoics say, every night as you tuck your children in before bed, think they will not make it through the night. Because what we're trying to prioritize is not having children, right? It's being in a relationship with them, right? Not having them, but being in a relationship, because that's all we can control, is this being mode. I think it's an interesting idea. And I think throughout this film, we can see parallels to Stoic ideas and even some Socratic and Platonic ideas. And as you'll see in the next clip, some can be portrayed in a fairly harsh way. All right.
Flash.
Stop it! This is your pain. This is your burning hand. It's right here.
I'm going to my cave. I'm going to my cave. I'm going to find my power animal.
No! Don't deal with it the way those dead people do. Come on!
I get the point, okay,
No,
please?
what you're feeling is premature enlightenment.
Ooh. All right, I know that video was a little rough, but I want to get at that idea that he talked about at the end, that this pain is premature enlightenment. What does that mean? Well, I think what he's getting at is that to become enlightened, to see the truth, to see the light, to understand the world better, we need to experience this pain. We need to break down the frame in which we see the world right now. This is sort of like what Socrates was trying to do with his constant questioning. Like, oh, why? This sort of nagging that he did to people was to try to get them to reassess, re-understand their fundamental presuppositions about the world, to understand that what they think is true, these pillars of truth that they hold dear, are actually not as solid as they thought. Right? We build our life off of these fundamental ideas, like going to college is good, or life is about getting money. And then we live our life and keep trying to achieve this thing, and then even if we do achieve it, we're going to realize that it's empty, that it's this empty goal, right? We And from a more modern psychological and cognitive science perspective, so this is what's called creating schema. Throughout our life, we create these schema, which is a map of the world. That's what they say, a map, but more like a story of how the world works. It's a understanding of how things interact, of what's right, what's wrong, all these different ideas, right? And throughout our life, we take in new information, we add to it, we add to this schema. But when we become older, what starts to happen is this schema becomes strong enough that it imprints on the world. So we see the world through the lens of this schema, we see the world through this lens. And so the lens becomes more correct because you're like, well, yeah, the information I'm getting is reinforcing or is saying that, the way I'm seeing the world is true. And so I think it's more true. And so you reinforce, it's a self-reinforcing perspective. And so it just becomes stronger and stronger. And so it's very difficult to break out of that perspective. And Socrates understood that. So he constantly questioned, he dug super deep into people's psyches. And they killed him for it, but that's how deep he dug. And I mean, even when we look at more Eastern philosophies, there are these Zen koans trying to get you to understand enlightenment. They're like, what is the hand sound rather of one hand clapping? That's what they're trying to do. It's the same thing as this pain. The same thing as this pain. It's trying to just snap you out of this way you've seen the world, and suddenly recontextualize, revisualize the world. It's the same thing that psychedelics do. Psychedelics don't reveal something that's actually true. They don't show you visions of a world that actually is, right? People come out of psychedelic experiences, they don't say things that are like profoundly mathematically true. But what it does, though, is it sort of jolts you out. It's a defibrillator to your psyche. So for people who are depressed, who have this, like, depression is this view of the world through your psyche. It's this again, the same lens, right? Depressed people see the world through a lens which makes everything seem worse, more meaningless. These people hate me, right? All these things, all these ideas. So they see the world through everything is about people hating me. But suddenly, when they take psychedelics, I remove me from myself, if that makes sense. I remove my consciousness from the body, and suddenly I see the world more objectively. And that is what we need to do to improve, right? And I want to talk about self-improvement. I want to talk about how we can become better, but I think it's important to do it in the context of this next clip, because I think it sort of is like a Zen koan and can help us understand this next idea.
Tommy Hilfiger said they should. That what a man looks like?
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
Whew. All right. So what does it mean for self-improvement to be masturbation? To me, that's like a sort of a confounding idea. And like I said, it's a little bit like a Zen koan, right? What does it mean for self-improvement masturbation? Well, there's the obvious portion of this where they're talking about vanity, that people improve themselves for vain reasons, right? But I think there's also a deeper level to this, where self-improvement, as we understand it in our society, is just marching further down the wrong path. It's sort of based on this fundamental incorrect presupposition that there is some truth that somebody knows, right? it's it's instead of breaking your frame, instead of breaking this lens, the way you see the world, it's accommodating more difficult information. The information like your failures, right? So when I fail, I have this schema, I have this frame of the world, right? And then I fail. Ah, wait, what happened? Something was wrong with my schema. Something was wrong with my frame. And so when that bad thing happens, me failing, right? When something other than what I thought happens, I need to accommodate it. And so what I do sometimes, and what everybody does, and the reason these self-help people are successful is because people have failure in their own lives. They don't achieve what they think they should be achieving, and they're like, ah, I don't fully understand. Oh, but this person does. This person, if I pay them, suddenly they'll tell me the truth. They'll tell me what I really have to do. And all of this comes down to that, again, that error we make where we think, that modal error where we think, if I can just have something, I can be something different. If I just have money, I can be happy. But it is fundamentally an error. It's not true, right? When we're trying to improve ourselves, we need to do what he says. He says, you know, self-destruction, on the other hand. Well, right? Because what is self-destruction? Well, I'll talk about it in this context, right? Think about destroying the way you see the world, destroying the self, which is that frame, that incorrect frame, that wrong frame. So one of the most important things for improvement is meditation. There's two things you need to do to self-improve, to improve yourself, to improve your grasp on truth and how you live your life, and become happier and all this stuff. It's not to pay somebody, it's not to do any of that. It's to do two things. First is what he calls self-destruction, but what people have called meditation. Is pulling your psyche, your consciousness, out of yourself to look at yourself from a third person perspective. You're like, what is that going to do, really? Well, think about when you give you give relationship advice to your friend. You tell your friend all the right stuff, right? Because you're like, hey, well, he's in it, he doesn't understand the truth, or she's in it, she doesn't understand what's really happening. She can't see the signs. But then when you're in relationships, suddenly you make those same mistakes that your friend did, right? There was a psychological study where they found, if you just got somebody who has this very difficult problem, they can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. If you just ask them to help help me, right, or help the person giving the test solve that same problem, or look at that problem from an objective standpoint, or explain that problem from an objective standpoint, suddenly they were able to understand the answer. So meditation is removing your consciousness from yourself to see your error and say, ah, no, I need to destroy that part of myself. That's not right, right? That's the self-destruction, the destruction of this frame. The second thing we need to do is we need to then, oh, okay, I destroyed my frame. Well, I need to understand what is more true, what is more real. So I need to go and well, by destroying my frame, I'll understand this is more right, I'll understand, no, this is more objectively true. And then I need to go into the world and say, well, how does that then apply to my life? How does that apply to these different situations? I don't want to go too deep into this. It'll be a video of its own, but think about love, right? What is love? People don't really understand the idea of love. It's, at least from a cognitive science perspective, it's this reciprocal revealing of oneself to another, and in turn the revealing of themselves to you. It's not like a thing that's intrinsic. I don't love my parents. It's not like part of them is love, right? It's not like part of me is love of them. It's not. It's not something that's inherent to me or inherent to them. It's something. It's a process. It's something we are doing between each other by me revealing parts of myself, them revealing parts of themselves, right? And that's what we must do with the truth, with this, some say God, whatever, logos. Some say that. I've explained that idea before, but really it's just with like the real truth. That's what we're trying to love. We're trying to love the real truth. And, philosophy. We're trying to love the wisdom, love wisdom. And how you do that is you reveal your true self, and then by revealing your true self, you will then have the universe, or whatever you want to call it, God, whatever, will reveal that truth to you more. So as you understand how you interact more, as you understand how you're differing from this objective truth more, how you realize you're wrong and how you can improve, suddenly the way you should be living your life will become more apparent to you. Now that's what we have to do to improve ourselves. And that is the antidote to the great problems of our age. And I think this last clip sort of encapsulates what that problem is in a way that's far better and far cooler than I think I ever could. All right.
We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives.
All right, I think this last clip was actually very interesting, and I found it quite profound in a lot of different ways. It brings up the thought that the difficulty of our time is that we don't have this great evil to overcome. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom is food, water, shelter, social, then you have community, up to self-actualization. And in the past, we have been lacking these basic needs. That has been the struggle of all of history. How to get enough food so that you can survive. How to make sure your family stays safe, your country stays safe. Right? That's why we have done everything we've ever done, so that we can make more money, or we can have more land, so we can have the food we need so our children will survive. That's the great sacrifice of history. I mean, Marx talks about it in the masters and serfs, employers and employees. This is all it's about. And I think it was all about that. That's why people fought wars. That's why people did everything. Think about growing up in a time where you don't have enough food to put on your table. That's the Great Depression, right? Then I think life and your purpose seems pretty obvious. Get enough food so I can survive. Get enough food so my children can survive. Right? That purpose is not something then I need to ask about. It's not a question. It's just action. I just need to do this. When Hitler, started invading Europe, for those young men who went to war, the question was not, what's my great purpose in life? All this stuff. No, it's there is an existential threat to the lives of my family and those I love. And that needs to be stopped. And so I will sacrifice my life. I will put my life and give my life for this. That is my purpose. And they fulfilled that purpose, and they sacrificed for that purpose. But as we have grown almost exponentially in the last 100 years, and developed exponentially in this last 100 years, we have created a society where there is no great need. Nobody is lacking in food and water. And those who are on the outskirts of society, right? On the margins. That's far from the majority. Certainly in our Western society. I mean, even in third world countries, it's still far better than it ever has been. Same with wars. We don't have this existential threat like we used to. And so we try to create them, and sometimes they're partially true, That's why, students on college campuses protest so much and do all this, because it makes them feel like they have more of a purpose. Because what they're really searching for is that purpose, is that existential threat that they can fight against that really means something. But in reality, it's not most important thing in our time. It's not the end all be all of this world. And so our great, battle is that moral battle, is this social battle. Our Great Depression is our lives, right? Our generation needs to become more self actualized. That's what we can do. That's what we have to do. See, as we move up this hierarchy of needs, which is what we have been doing through evolution for the last thousand years, whatever, right? We've been moving and clawing our way up so that now we have the food, so that now we have the shelter. So now we are not wanting in these basic necessities. And so now our eye needs to not look back, but look forward. How can we become not just wealthy in food and shelter and all these things, but realize true purpose? How can we understand a deeper truth about the world? How can we move from searching for having things, searching for things to have so that we can be happy? Why don't we search for how to become happy? Why don't we become better? Why don't we try to become kinder? This is the great dilemma and problem of our age. And it's one we must all face. As if we don't, we will continue to spin into nothingness as we keep searching for something that is not there. As we keep trying to rekindle a world which is long past. We cannot again become a world focused only on food and shelter. For that world has passed. And we need to look to our moral development, our social development. It's what we have to do. I think this video was maybe a bit much. It was definitely one of the more difficult videos I've made so far. But thank you all for watching, and I hope it was at least vaguely interesting. I'd love to hear any comments you have. And thank you so much for watching.